Hi everyone, this is Sergey Gusev and welcome back to this channel. Today I want to talk about how to oil paint human eyes. This is a fragment from my full video tutorial, which is still available to download from my webpage. It's more than 4 hours long and I talk about how to paint a master copy of the very famous French painter of the 19th century, William Bouguereau. So check it out, the link in the description. And let's get started. First of all, even before you start working on the eyes, in my opinion, you should think about its construction. Human eye is basically a sphere, which means it's not flat, it has a volume, and volume always means light and shadow. Therefore, we can't paint it simply white, the sclera of the eye. It's not going to be pure white. First of all, because of the volume, so the light is going to be lighter, the shadow darker. Then the sclera always has a shade of either ultramarine or ochre. And you also should remember that because of the skull construction, the eyes are placed in the eye sockets quite deep in the skull and therefore are not catching a lot of light. They're usually in a dark halftone, sometimes in a shadow. This is why we can't use pure white. It's just simply too light, like shiny white. We have to remember about tonal values. And therefore, I would recommend you to use some ultramarine, probably some ochre, or maybe a bit of something yellow. Of course, titanium white, and I think even umber, maybe raw umber or burnt umber, when painting that part which gets into the shadow. So I guess you understand now that it's all about the construction, the skull, and we have to know a little bit about the anatomy of the head before we start working with oils. Usually I always suggest to make some quick sketches, maybe just drawings with a graphite pencil on paper, to figure out the construction of the eye or any other detail you're gonna work on. Because it can be a little bit difficult if you're a beginner to work with oils, care for values, care for the colors, and also remember about construction. If you make some quick drawings and if you figure out the construction of the eye, just believe me, it's gonna be a lot easier to work with colors. I would also recommend you to paint both of the eyes almost at the same time. Otherwise you can make some mistakes and sometimes you can paint one eye higher and the other one lower. It's gonna look a little bit strange, and so you can start working from one eye but then quickly switch to the other one, make a few brush strokes, also start working from the darks, and then get back to the first eye and correct some details. But in general, try to work on both of them almost at the same time to avoid some basic mistakes. Right now I'm working on the hair just to correct the further edge of the head, of the forehead, of the eye socket, of the cheekbone, just correcting the silhouette. It's also quite important for the proportions, otherwise we can make the face quite white. And after that, after a very quick correction, we get back to the eyes. I'm working on the upper side, on the upper edge of the eye socket. That area is turning a little bit more to the light source, getting some more cool light, and therefore we use not just white to make it lighter, but also some ultramarine and maybe a bit of scarlet red. So, of course, you have to remember that when working on the colors, we need to remember about the light source. I don't want to talk a lot right now because it's quite a quick episode, but in general, you can watch some of my previous tutorials on the channel. I talk a lot about the light source. It has a very important meaning in realistic painting. So, in other words, the lights are going to be cool and the shadows warmer. For the shadows we use ochre, maybe scarlet lake, some burnt umber, And for the lights we use more white, more ultramarine. Sometimes we can use some cold yellows like maybe a lemon yellow, and also can use some other reds like cadmium red deep, for example, or magenta, or other blues like cobalt blue or sky blue. But we have to use different colors for the lights and for the shadows. And then we just continue working on the eyes, on the root of the nose. Remember that the eyes is just a detail, it's a part of the bigger form. By the big form I mean, of course, the portrait itself, the head, and therefore we have to remember to paint them quite soft, with very soft edges, otherwise they will stand out and attract too much attention. We should remember that we have the tip of the nose in the foreground and the eyes are slightly further away. Not too far away, of course, but we need to paint it soft, otherwise they will get in the foreground instead of the tip of the nose. So, it's a small trick we have to know and understand and apply when painting. I would also recommend you to paint very soft the edges of the irises, also because of the same reasons. Otherwise they will attract too much attention, and we care mostly for the big form of the head. And even when it's time to paint the highlights on the surface of the cornea, also remember that they are quite far away from the foreground. Don't use pure white, darken a little bit. And again, remember about the meaning of the light source. The highlights will be slightly cooler than pure white. We have to add a tiny bit of ultramarine, I guess. Maybe when getting close to the end, we could take a smaller brush, also synthetic with a very small, soft and pointed tip. I'm using it like I would use a graphite pencil with a very sharp tip, just drawing, correcting the shapes, adjusting some really small and tiny things. I'm going to work a little bit even on the reflections in the irises. It's not important, but it's a master copy, and if we see that the master painted it, I think we should follow the master and try to get as close to the original as possible. So yes, we can work on some tiny things we see in the original. You probably noticed that I painted a little bit the skin tones around the eyes. Again, just because we have to connect one detail with the entire head with the big form, and therefore it makes sense, in my opinion, to work a little bit around the eyes, not just only on the eyes. So right now I'm getting close to the end. I'm not going to make any big changes right now. And let's sum up at the end. First of all, I think it's quite important to remember about the construction of the eyes. Second of all, remember about the light source. Remember that the eyes are placed in the eye sockets, so they're not catching a lot of light. They will be mostly in a dark halftone. Some parts will be even in the shadow. It's quite important when judging the values and also colors. Because for dark values, we choose warm colors, for light values, cool colors. That's quite important. After we do these basic things, we can concentrate on the details, work on the very tiny things as much as we want. I usually suggest to paint things like this alla prima in one sitting, but if you feel you need more time, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, or even a week, just do so. It's not about the time, it's about the result. And so it's quite important to just figure out and understand how to paint the eyes. It is not important how much time it takes. So take your time, don't worry. You can continue painting tomorrow, it's not a problem. Right now I'm making some final touch-ups, just making some almost invisible corrections. And here I think I'm gonna stop. Okay, let me know in the comments if you like this video. Check out the materials I used in the description. Follow me on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to this channel. You can download the full video tutorial, just follow the links. It's available on my webpage. I wish you good luck with your networks, guys, and see you in my next episode.